Leaving already? I just assumed you'd want to stick around and do some overtime to prove to management that you're management material, Kelly.
But Bad Boss Bob, I've worked overtime all week.
Exactly. Why stop now?
Scene. What could have Kelly done to maybe get out of that situation with Bad Boss Bob? One thing she could have done is kind of spin it back to the positive. I gave my full effort that week, Bob, and I needed to go home so I could refresh myself and be ready to get back here early in the morning. That's a way to offset Bad Boss Bob while she gets to save face and set a boundary. Boundaries are really tough with toxic bosses because you have to keep repeating the behavior over and over. So when he asks her to stay again tomorrow, she has to be ready to give that same answer with a smile to set the boundary. Bad bosses are addicted to one thing, your reaction. They want to get you flustered. They have to be in control. But the one truth that's inevitable is if you stopped reacting, then you would be unshakable and be able to handle that bad boss. Now, I know it's easier said than done, but let's face it, toxic people don't listen to reason. So we have to work on what we can control within our own selves. Every minute you spend yourself defending yourself. Every second you try to react is a second you're never going to get back. Spoiler alert, your peace is your power. Last week, in my previous speech, Toxic at the Top, I was talking about peer-to-peer interactions. Today we're talking all about what happens when the boss is the biohazard and what can you do about it. If you're ready, can I see some smiles out there? Fantastic. Today, fellow Toastmasters, I'm going to talk about 5 key characteristics of a bad biohazardous boss, things that you can look out for in your workplace today. And then I'll share my 8 strategies on how to handle this kind of toxic leadership. Let's dive in. The first one, we've all heard this a million times, just breathe, right? Well, that's easier said than done because the toxic boss likes to take control and overact, and so breathing gets us out of that moment where we can detach, where they're having an emotional reaction, and we can just breathe and let them have their little hissy fit in front of us. Second, they display volatile behavior. So how we can handle this is we want to keep a journal of everything they say. Now, I like a written journal that I keep in my purse and I take to and from places. You can use your phone and keep notes on toxic bosses. However, if you do that, make sure you don't use your computer phone or your computer. You want to keep that journal separate or on your phone so that you don't have a record. Third, they have unethical leadership. They want to manipulate us by constantly texting us, like when Bad Bob Boss kept texting Kelly, can you come into work early? Can you stay overtime? It's the same thing as asking. Texting is a boundary, and it's unethical for people to abuse our time when we're at the workplace. 4, they like to micromanage and gossip and start rumors amongst the employees. It sounds weird because they're the boss, but the first time that you see someone who's in an authority position talk toxic about another employee or a peer, it's just that behavior is never going to change. So make sure you document it and beware that that boss has a problem with control issues. Number 5, this is all about going into setting boundaries again. We don't want to gossip with our peers, but what we can do is maybe have a coffee, invite a peer out for coffee and say, you know, have you been noticing any toxic ways that our boss has been managing the team? I'm trying to get a fresh perspective on this, and I don't want to react emotionally. I want to be professional. The key here is to not get into a gossip exchange, but listen to what the coworker has to say and maybe jot some notes and tell them, would you mind being an alliance for me with HR or the boss if this escalates? I hope it's not going to get to that point. I just wanted to get your take on it because maybe I'm reading it wrong. That way you're building an alliance and you're not gossiping. Number 6. If you do have to go to HR, make sure that you take your time and look at those documented notes and write down everything that you can summarize. You don't want to go into HR and rant. You don't want to be emotional. You want to give them the facts of the situation. You want to report strategically. You might say something like, I'd like to share these documented facts of things that have been happening to me because I need your advice on how I can proceed professionally. Then the HR person knows that you're being factual and that you're not there to gossip or start a revenge process. You're truly there to get their opinion on how to proceed and fix the problem. These type of situations are long and drawn out, and we really have to be careful on the emotional scale because it's easy when we're in these situations to get kind of drowned in HR when they start asking questions of us like, how did that make you feel? Remember, it could be a trigger that just opens up this big rant where you feel like, I feel like he was horrible to me and he could have talked better to me. And you could go on for like 5 or 10 minutes and not even realize it. So whenever HR specifically asks you a question, try to repeat it back. It's a great tip to gain your composure or say something like, I'm hearing you say, and then respond. But try not to respond with feelings. Try to respond with facts in the situation. Number 7, you need to work on your own performance. Why? Because bad bosses, they want to rattle you and they want to grind you and they want to get the most out of every minute of your day. And it's exhausting. We can run into the ground. And when we're going into an emotional situation every day, it's really easy to let that pressure shrink us in our job and we get quiet in our interactions and our meetings. However, be bold. Stand up. Your performance is going to speak for itself. Meet your deadlines, say things to the team, and be visual. You can use phrases like, I'm just circling back to confirm this project's on track. Even if you're having an issue with that manager, boss, or person on that team, if it's going badly, you're just checking in. What can I do to help? You're keeping it 100% professional, yet you're not shrinking from stress, and you're engaging in meetings, and you're doing the job that you were paid to do. Because remember, your reputation follows you, so you don't want to get into a revenge situation, and you definitely don't want the pressure to shrink you down and stress you out to the point where you can't contribute. And number 8, what we need to do is work on that exit plan. We all know that this was going to be the final part of this, right? However, it's, again, really easy when the stress happens to let day by day roll by. You go in, you're beat down because you know you're going to have another exhausting meeting with Bad Boss Bob. He's going to embarrass you in front of your coworkers. You have to go have 5 or 6 coffees to get wired up, to get ready. However, if you can take a moment and think, okay, if I can just be the best I can be and work on myself until my exit, I'm going to use this as a training ground to work with difficult people. Because guess what? When you go to the next job, there might be another Bad Boss Bob. So why don't you take these interactions and try to find the most cool, calm, and collected way to engage with them? And how can you use a little psychology to make it easier on yourself while dealing with them until you can get out? Speaking of the exit plan, you have to take massive action. Most people say, okay, I'm going to send out a resume before work. No, if you want to get out of a toxic situation, you have to be diligent because it's going to take a lot of energy to throw on that smile and be professional and work on your own performance while you're there. So I suggest doing it in the morning. Get up really early, maybe half an hour before you have to leave for work, and just have your coffee while you're doing your resumes. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. Tell them it's a confidential search. Don't tell them why, because you don't want people out there saying, hey, Kelly's looking for a job, and it can circle back on LinkedIn. You might even want to LinkedIn to someone and say, hey, can we have a private chat? I loved working with you 2 years ago. I'd like to get your perspective on something. If you reach out in that manner, you're coming from a place of positive hope versus desperation. Most of us go into this situation like, I have to get a job and I have to leave by tomorrow. It's not going to be the case, especially if you have a mortgage and kids and all these responsibilities. You might be there a little bit longer than you expected. However, remember, toxic bosses rarely change. So if you witness the behavior getting a little bit better, don't slack in your exit plan because guess what? it's going to happen again. He's going to start texting you again or embarrass you again, and then you've stopped your search. So take massive action when you're doing your job search. And again, stress is real and destructive. Get therapy, join a support group. Try not to dump on your family and friends every time. I know I'm guilty of that. And remember, in the end, if you take massive action, you will hold your composure, you breathe during the day, you treat yourself well, and you remember that toxic people feed on your reaction, and you work on that exit plan someday. It's just going to be another horrible experience in the rearview mirror of your life. And guess what? It might even be a fun story to tell at a party. Madam Toastmaster.